Have you ever heard a sentence that felt like it ripped the air out of your lungs? One line, just a handful of words. Yet it slams into you so hard that your entire history feels fake, like maybe you imagined the life you lived. That's what happened to me. I had been his stepdad for 17 years, 17 birthdays, 17 Christmases. 17 years of waking up at dawn to pack lunches, staying up at midnight to calm fevers, showing up at every school event so he'd never feel the absence of a father. 17 years where I believed love, consistency, and sacrifice were enough to make me Dad. And then 16 words. "You're just the dad I got stuck with." He said it so casually, like tossing away a candy wrapper, but those words hit me like glass shattering against concrete. Had a moment where your heart doesn't just break, it caves in? Where the sound in the room dies, but your pulse is thundering so loud it's all you hear? That was me. Mary was right there. She didn't defend me. She didn't gasp. She didn't even flinch. Her silence was louder than his insult. It said everything I didn't want to believe, that maybe, just maybe, she agreed. I remember my hands trembling. I was holding one of his shirts, fresh from the dryer, still warm, and suddenly it felt heavy, like a weight I couldn't carry anymore. My throat tightened, my jaw clenched. I wanted to scream back, "Stuck with?" I raised you. I chose you every day when your real father vanished. I gave you my best years. But I didn't say a word. Why? Because silence is what happens when your soul is stunned. In those seconds, I replayed everything. The soccer cleats I bought even when rent was late. The nights I worked overtime just to cover his textbooks. The way I stayed awake by his hospital bed when he broke his arm. Did none of that matter? Could all of it vanish with a single cruel sentence? Here's the part you might not understand unless you've lived it. Kids don't just talk, they echo. They echo what they've heard, what they've been fed. His tone wasn't new, it was borrowed. And when I looked at Mary, I saw the truth I had ignored. She had planted this silence. She had let the ground rot. I looked at Ethan. His eyes didn't even flicker with doubt. He meant it. In his mind, I wasn't his father. I was just the filler. The man who held the place of the ghost who came before me. And in Mary's eyes, I saw no fight left. No correction. No, don't say that. He's your father. Nothing. Do you know how fast 17 years can collapse? Faster than a heartbeat. It was like standing in front of a house you built brick by brick, only to watch it collapse in a second because someone kicked out the foundation. And in that moment, I realized something brutal. Blood speaks louder than sacrifice. Silence screams louder than love. I could feel the walls of the room closing in, like I was shrinking while they grew taller. I wasn't the head of this family. I wasn't even part of it. I was an outsider in the home I had built with my own hands. Here's the question I need to ask you. What would you do if a single sentence erased your entire story? Would you fight for your place, raise your voice, demand recognition? Or would you realize, too late, that you had already lost? Do you know what silence feels like when it's heavier than words? When the absence of sound carries more weight than a scream? That's where I was. Ethan's words were still hanging in the air, but it was Mary's silence that buried me. No defense. No gasp. No, don't talk to him like that. Nothing. Just a hollow quiet that made me feel like a stranger in my own home. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. Instead, I walked to the closet at the end of the hallway. Every step felt slower, like my legs were made of stone. Inside that closet sat a box I swore I'd never open again. A plain cardboard box, sealed years ago, filled with files, photographs, fragments of a past I had kept hidden for Ethan's sake. Had a moment where you realized that the only way forward is to open the very door you promised yourself you'd keep locked? That was me right then. I pulled the box down. Dust lifted into the air. The cardboard edges scratched my hands. For a second, I just stared at it, almost hoping it would vanish back into the dark, but it didn't. And I knew what was inside could no longer stay buried. Back in the living room, the silence hadn't moved. Ethan was on the couch, arms crossed, glaring at me like I was the villain in his story. Mary sat beside him, still wordless, her eyes somewhere on the floor. I placed the box on the coffee table. The thud echoed. His eyes flickered just for a moment. "You think I don't have answers?" I finally said. My voice was low, steady. "You think 17 years disappeared just because you said so?" He rolled his eyes. "What are you even doing?" I didn't answer. Instead, I lifted the lid. Inside were folders, envelopes, photographs, each one a shard of history. I pulled out the first folder. His birth certificate, blank where father should have been. I set it down in front of him. "Do you see this?" I asked. He barely glanced. Then came the school report from when he was 6, where the teacher had written, "David attends every parent-teacher meeting. Ethan's biological father is absent." I laid it beside the birth certificate. Flashback hit me in waves. Me sitting on those tiny school chairs, smiling at teachers, pretending it didn't sting every time I had to sign my name under guardian instead of father. "You don't know half of what I've carried," I whispered. My fingers reached into the box again. This time, a photo. Ethan at 9 years old, holding a baseball bat, his grin missing 2 front teeth. I remembered that day. He struck out 3 times, then finally hit the ball. I was the one who ran onto the field, arms in the air, cheering like he'd won the World Series. I held the photo up. "Oh, was that nothing to you?" He shrugged. Anyone could have been there. The word stung, but I stayed calm, because this wasn't about defending myself. This was about truth. From the bottom of the box, I pulled out a sealed envelope. Ethan leaned forward now. Something about the way it was marked court records caught his attention. Mary shifted in her seat. "You've lived 17 years on one version of the story," I said. "Maybe it's time you saw the version you weren't told." The room was still. The only sound was the soft crackle of paper as I placed the envelope on the table. Opened a door knowing what's on the other side might burn everything down. But you open it anyway? That's exactly where we were headed. And before I tore it open, I looked Ethan in the eye. "You want to erase me? Fine. But the truth has its own way of carving scars. Are you ready to see them? Because once the box is open, there's no going back. Thought you knew the story of your own life, only to discover it had been edited. Pieces cut out, entire truths buried. That's what I was about to show Ethan." The envelope lay on the table. His arms were still crossed, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of curiosity. Mary shifted beside him, her breath catching in her throat. She knew what was inside. She had begged me once, years ago, to lock it away, to protect him. But protection and silence are not the same thing. I tore it open. The paper crackled, and suddenly the room wasn't our living room anymore. It was a courtroom. The sound filled my head again, the echo of voices bouncing against wooden walls, the judge's gavel slamming, the smell of disinfectant, old wood, and fear. I could almost hear Mary's voice, desperate and raw, begging the judge not to release him. "Play it," I said quietly. My hand hovered over a USB drive I had kept hidden inside the file. Ethan frowned. "Play what?" Without another word, I walked to the TV, plugged it in, and pressed play. The screen flickered, grainy at first, then sharpened. There she was, Mary, younger, trembling on the witness stand. Her hair tied back, her eyes swollen from crying. She was pleading with the court, her voice breaking. "Please, Your Honor, he's dangerous. Don't let him near my son. Don't let him take him." The sound hit the room like a thunderclap. Ethan sat up straighter. What is this? His voice cracked, the anger draining into confusion. Mary covered her mouth with her hands. Tears welled instantly. She couldn't even look at him. "It's your father," I said. My throat was tight, but I forced the words out. "Your real father." "The man you think you were robbed of? The one I supposedly kept you from. That's who she's begging the court to protect you from." Ethan's head snapped toward her. "Mom!" His voice was sharp, but there was something else under it. Fear. She shook her head, whispering, "I didn't want you to know. Not like this." The video continued. A lawyer's voice cut through, cold and methodical. "Mrs. Wilson, are you stating under oath that the defendant was abusive?" Mary's voice cracked. "Yes, he hit me. He threatened Ethan." "I thought he would kill us both." And then silence. The kind of silence that screams. The kind that leaves you no place to hide. Ethan's face went pale. He turned toward me, then back to her, his mouth opening, closing, like the words were there, but his voice had abandoned him. Do you know the look of someone watching their world collapse? It's not loud. It's not rage. It's the stillness, the blank stare, the quiet unraveling of everything they thought was true. He whispered, "You lied to me." Mary tried to reach for him. "I didn't lie. I was trying to protect you." But Ethan pulled back, his chair scraping the floor. His voice rose. "Protect me? By letting me hate him? By letting me hate you?" His chest was heaving, his fists clenched. But then he looked at me, and that was worse. His eyes were full of something I can't even name. Betrayal? Shame? Loss? "You knew," he spat. "All these years, you both knew. And you let me think he was some hero who walked away. You let me believe I was abandoned, when really I was saved." His voice cracked on that last word, saved. The video played on, the gavel struck. The judge's voice echoed, custody awarded to the mother. The father is to have no contact until further review. The screen went black. The silence that followed was unbearable. Ethan's hands were shaking. He pressed his palms into his face, his shoulders trembling. When he finally spoke, his voice was broken. 17 years, and I never knew." "Why didn't you just tell me?" Mary sobbed. "I didn't answer. Because sometimes the truth doesn't heal. It cuts deeper. But here's the thing. Once a ghost is unleashed, you can't put it back in the box." The courtroom was no longer just a memory. It was alive in our living room, haunting us all, and I could see it. The boy I had raised, the young man I thought I knew, unraveling right in front of me. Here's the question I'll leave hanging in your mind, the same one that tore through mine. What happens when the truth that should set you free only chains you tighter? Stood in a room that felt colder than winter, even though the heater was humming? That's what it felt like that night. Not the kind of cold that makes you shiver, but the kind that seeps into your bones, into your chest, and sits there, heavy, unforgiving. The video had ended. The courtroom echoes faded, but the silence they left behind was louder than any gavel. Ethan sat at the edge of the couch, his face in his hands, knuckles white, his breath uneven. Mary sobbed softly, almost praying under her breath, her body trembling with every gasp. And me? I just sat still, staring at nothing, because sometimes the only thing left to do is nothing at all. I had raised him for 17 years, bandaged his knees, showed up to every game, every birthday, taught him how to drive, and with 16 words he erased me. And with one video, I erased myself. There was no winning this fight. Do you know the moment when you realize you're no longer wanted? Not as a partner, not as a father, not even as a man standing in the same room. That's where I was. I pulled the envelope closer, slid out a single sheet of paper, and clicked the pen open. The sound of the ballpoint echoed in that stillness, sharper than a blade. "What are you doing?" Mary's voice cracked. I didn't answer. Not yet. I just wrote. My name, my signature, my withdrawal. Every stroke felt like carving something out of myself. Ethan lifted his head just enough to see. His face twisted. Confusion, anger, maybe even fear. But he didn't stop me. He didn't say my name. He just watched. I folded the paper, slid it back inside the envelope, and placed it on the table. My hand lingered for a second. Then I let go. Mary reached for me. "David, please, don't! Don't leave like this, quote." Her hand trembled, but I pulled mine away. I couldn't meet her eyes, because if I did, I might break. And men like me, we don't get to break. I stood, the chair scraping against the hardwood, a sound that seemed to slice the night open. Ethan flinched. I wanted to tell him I loved him, that I always had, that none of this was his fault. But the words stuck, heavy, like stones in my throat. Maybe he wouldn't believe me anyway. I walked to the door. My footsteps felt louder than usual, like each one was announcing the end. And then, silence again. Not even the sound of Mary's sobs. Not even Ethan's ragged breathing, just silence. At the doorway, I turned back once. Their faces blurred in my vision, not from distance, but from the weight pressing on my chest. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. So I just nodded. Once, slow, like a man signing his own verdict, I stepped out, closed the door. The click of the lock was softer than I expected, but it cut deeper than any scream. That was it. 17 years ended not with a fight, not with forgiveness, but with a piece of paper and a door closing behind me. And here's the part that still haunts me. As I walked into the night, the city lights glowing dim, I realized there would be no dramatic reconciliation, no second chance. Sometimes love doesn't end in fire. Sometimes it freezes, and the ice never melts. So let me ask you, if you were me, if you were standing in that doorway with a son who no longer claimed you and a partner drowning in guilt, would you have stayed? Or would you have signed your own exit like I did? Looked at a piece of paper and felt like it was mocking you? Like its silence was louder than any insult? That's what happened to me the first time I saw my college application packet sitting on the kitchen table. A neat stack of forms, deadlines highlighted, a checklist stapled to the front. It should have been exciting, a step forward, proof that I was ready for the next chapter of my life. But instead, it became the trigger. I flipped through the pages, filling in line after line, name, address, date of birth, easy. But then my eyes froze at a single box. Father's name. The pen in my hand hovered, my chest tightened. My brain started searching for air. What do you even put in that box when the man who raised you walked out and the man who gave you life was never there? Do you write David? Do you leave it blank? Do you make something up just to get through the form? I stared at it so long the letters blurred. My hand shook. My stomach knotted. I could almost hear the clock ticking louder than the house itself. When I finally snapped out of it, I slammed the pen down too hard. Ink streaked across the paper. My mom, Mary, rushed in from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. "What happened?" I pushed the packet toward her. "This. They want everything. Birth certificate, legal documents. They need his name." "And what am I supposed to give them? A ghost?" Her face paled. She didn't answer right away. She just looked at the form like it was a weapon pointed at both of us. And maybe it was, because this wasn't just about a name. It was about identity, about the legal truth that colleges, governments, and systems demand. You can't outrun paperwork. And in that moment, the closure David thought he gave us turned into an open wound for me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw every paper across the room. Instead, I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that didn't even feel like mine. So this is it? After everything, I don't even get to exist on paper without a question mark next to me. Mary's lips trembled. She reached for me, but I pulled back. The heat in my chest was boiling now. 17 years with him, Mom, and still nothing. Just a blank box. She whispered, "We'll figure it out, Ethan. When?" I cut her off. "When the deadline's tomorrow." When the school won't process my file without a father's identity? What do you want me to say, Mom? That I don't have one? That he doesn't count? That I'm some mistake? Her silence was worse than an answer. I stood up, pacing, my hands running through my hair. Every step felt like a fire crackling under my feet. I couldn't stop picturing the admissions officer opening my file, pausing, shaking their head, like my entire future could be undone by one empty line. Do you know that feeling? When your whole life, your whole sense of self, comes down to one piece of missing information? When you realize you can't move forward without dragging the past into the light? That was me. Right there. I grabbed the birth certificate from the envelope, looked at it again, and there it was, blank. A clean, cruel space next to father, the proof that my existence was incomplete in the eyes of the world. I wanted to tear it in half, burn it, pretend it didn't matter, but I couldn't, because colleges don't care about feelings. The law doesn't care about broken families. Systems don't pause for grief. I clenched it so hard the paper bent, my jaw locked. I shouted before I could stop myself. "Why didn't you fix this years ago? Why didn't you tell me the truth before now?" Mary flinched. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she didn't break. Not yet. And in that silence, in that unbearable space between us, I realized something terrifying. Maybe the answers I needed weren't answers I wanted to hear. Because if she had lied once, what else had she hidden? The box on the form wasn't just empty, it was a doorway. One I wasn't sure I was ready to walk through, but I had no choice. So let me ask you, if your entire future depended on a name you weren't sure you even wanted to know, would you go looking for it? Or would you leave the box blank and accept the weight of that silence forever? Heard a truth that made the room feel smaller, like the walls themselves were closing in, stealing the oxygen, leaving you gasping? That's what it felt like the night my mom finally spoke. The house was too quiet. Dinner sat untouched on the table. I'd been pacing for what felt like hours, still furious at the blank on my birth certificate. The papers were spread out in front of me like evidence in a trial. Every line filled, except the one that mattered most. And I couldn't stop glaring at it, like maybe if I stared long enough, the name would appear on its own, but it didn't. My mom stood at the sink, wringing the same dish towel in her hands until it was almost torn. She'd been watching me from the corner of her eye, waiting for the right moment. Or maybe just dreading what she knew had to come. Finally, she whispered, "Ethan, there's something I should have told you a long time ago." Her voice cracked. It wasn't the usual mom voice that scolded or soothed. It was thin, fragile, like it could shatter with a single word. I froze. What now? My tone was sharp, too sharp, but I couldn't hold it back. She looked down, refusing to meet my eyes. "Your name, it wasn't always Ethan. And mine, it wasn't always Mary." The words dropped heavy, one after another, like stones sinking in water. For a second, I thought I misheard her. "What are you talking about?" She finally turned, her face pale, her hands trembling. "We weren't supposed to stay here. We were supposed to disappear, change everything. Your name, my name, the story of who we were. It was the only way to keep you safe. That word hit me like a slap. I barked a bitter laugh. Safe? You call this safe? Lying to me for years? Leaving me with nothing but blanks? Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't look away this time. You don't understand. I had to protect you from him. The room tilted. The air was heavy. Protect me? From who? I sat down hard, the chair legs scraping against the floor. Say it. Just say what you've been hiding. Quote. She pulled open a drawer, digging out an old folder. The edges were worn, the paper inside yellowed, like it had been hidden for decades. She placed it on the table between us. Your father. Your real father. He wasn't just absent. He was dangerous. The word echoed, dangerous. She opened the folder, and I caught glimpses of documents, old court transcripts, even a mugshot that made my stomach twist. The face was unfamiliar, but the name beneath it was mine. The same last name I had carried until she changed it. He hurt people, she whispered. He hurt me, and when I found out I was pregnant, I knew that if he found out about you, he'd never let us go. So I ran. I changed everything. I gave you a new name, a new life. David. David stepped in, and for a while, it worked. But the truth was always there, waiting. Her words poured out like floodwater, and with every sentence, the world I thought I knew unraveled. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cover my ears. Instead, I just sat there, numb, because the woman who had been my anchor, my constant, was suddenly a stranger. Why didn't you tell me sooner? My voice cracked. Why did you let me hate David when all this time? Her tears finally broke free, because I was afraid. Afraid you'd look at me differently. Afraid you'd go searching for him. Afraid you'd see the darkness in him and think it was in you too. That line cut deeper than anything else. I shoved the folder away, papers spilling across the table. So what now? I need his name. The college needs it. What do I do? March in there and say, by the way, my father's a convicted criminal who never wanted me? Her hands covered her face. She didn't answer. And that silence, it crushed me. Because the truth wasn't just painful, it was useless. It couldn't fill the blank. It couldn't give me peace. It only left me with a heavier burden. The knowledge that my past was built on fear, lies, and escape. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, trying to steady my breathing. The weight in my chest was unbearable. And here's the part that still haunts me. In that moment, I realized she wasn't just confessing to protect me. She was begging for forgiveness she knew she didn't deserve. Heard something from someone you love that you can't unhear? That reshapes not just how you see them, but how you see yourself? That was me. That was us. And as much as I wanted to hate her, as much as I wanted to slam the door and never look back, I couldn't. Because beneath the lies, beneath the fear, was the one truth that never changed. She had chosen me, chosen to run, chosen to sacrifice everything so I could grow up believing I was safe, but safe and whole are not the same thing. And now I had to decide which one mattered more. So let me ask you, if you found out your entire life was built on a secret meant to protect you, would you forgive the person who kept it? Or would you walk away, carrying that betrayal forever? Chased hope like it was oxygen? Not because you're naive, but because the room you're standing in won't let you breathe anymore. That was me after my mother's confession. The truth didn't lift the weight off my chest. It pressed harder. The forms on the table. The empty space next to Father's name. The deadline. The future I could see but couldn't touch. So I did the one thing I swore I'd never do. I went looking for the family I'd never met. His family. The folder my mom opened had more than court transcripts. It had a last name I barely recognized, and a city I'd never visited on purpose. Fresno. A street I'd passed once on a class trip, when the bus slowed at a light and an old man watered a patch of stubborn grass by a low fence. Funny what your brain saves. I sat on my bed with the folder in my lap and my laptop open. I typed the name, then the street, then the city. Page after page, people finder sites, obituaries, yearbooks, Facebook groups with blurry profile pictures and long chains of birthday wishes. Every click felt like knocking on a door that might not exist. Searched for yourself and found 100 versions that weren't you? That's what the feed looked like. Faces with my eyes, but not my smile. A jawline that could have been mine if I'd lived another life. Then I saw her. A woman in her late 50s, hair pulled back, smile too warm for a DMV photo, caption, "Sunday tamales, come by if you're family." Her last name matched the one on my birth certificate before my mom changed it. The street in the check-in matched the folder. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Family. That word tasted strange in my mouth. I sent a message. Just one line. Half apology, half plea. "Hi, my name is Ethan. I think we might be related." I didn't expect an answer. Not that night. Maybe not ever. But my phone buzzed 5 minutes later. Another buzz, then a call. I stared at the screen until it stopped ringing. My heart didn't slow down. It sped up. I called back. "Hello?" The voice was careful, like someone stepping into a dark room and feeling for furniture. "Hi," I said. My throat felt dry. "Is this Rosa?" A pause. "Who's asking?" I swallowed. "I'm Ethan. My mother was Mary. She used to go by another name. I think your brother—" I stopped. The word father got stuck on the way out. "I think your brother is my biological father." The line went quiet, then softened. "Mijo," she said. The word fell like a blanket over cold shoulders. "Where are you?" "I'm in Pasadena." Another pause, then a breath that sounded like someone choosing, "Come by tomorrow, noon. I'll make lunch. We can talk." I didn't know whether to cry or laugh. I nodded like she could see me. "Okay. Thank you. Bring nothing but yourself," she said. "And bring your questions." When the call ended, I sat there in the dim light, phone warm in my hand, a stranger's voice still echoing in my ear. There it was. The thing I'd been starving for since the blank line on the form swallowed my name, a path, a door, a chance to write an answer where there had been none. I hardly slept. Every hour, my brain tried to forecast the conversation, how I'd ask, how I'd listen, how I'd keep my voice steady. But the forecast kept changing. Storms, sun, back to storms, morning came gray. The city felt quieter than usual, like the streets knew I was carrying something fragile. I printed my application checklist again, even though I didn't need another copy. I slipped my birth certificate into a plastic sleeve. My hands shook. I steadied them on the counter. My mom hovered in the doorway, eyes red, face tired. "Do you want me to go with you?" I looked at her for a long second. The answer I wanted and the answer I needed weren't the same. "I think I should do this alone," I said. She nodded like she'd already rehearsed that moment too. "Text me when you get there." I grabbed my keys, stood still. "Mom?" "Yeah?" "I don't know what I'll find. I know." Her voice was soft, but it didn't waver. "Whatever it is, come home after." The drive north felt longer than the miles said. The freeway stretched like a sentence that didn't know how to end. I kept my music low. I kept checking the passenger seat to make sure the folder was still there, like the papers might decide to jump if I looked away. Past Bakersfield, the fields opened up like pages, rows and rows of green, tractors in the distance like punctuation marks. I rolled the window down and let the smell of dirt and water settle me. The world is big, I thought. My problems are big. The world is bigger. That helped for exactly 3 breaths. I turned onto the street from the folder, modest houses, chain-link fences, a sun-faded playset in one yard with a swing that creaked in a wind I couldn't feel. Kids on bikes. A dog barking behind a gate, the kind of bark that says, "This is my block." Who are you? The house was beige with a worn red door. A pot of marigolds on the step. The number matched. My heart did the thing it does when you're about to say something you can't take back. I parked, sat there, stared at the door, stood outside a version of your life that might have happened if one decision had gone differently. That's what that porch felt like. A life I almost lived, a last name I almost kept. I got out. The air was warmer than in Pasadena, the kind of warmth that settles in your clothes and stays. My shoes made soft sounds on the walkway. I could hear voices inside, a radio low, someone laughing, a spoon clinking against a pot. "Sunday tamales," the caption had said. I swallowed. I knocked. One knock. Then two more because one felt too polite. Footsteps. The hush of a TV being turned down. The slide of a chain latch. The door opened a few inches, then wider. She was smaller than in her photos. Softer, too, in a way that cameras don't capture. Lines at the corners of her eyes that looked earned, not given. "Ethan?" she asked, like she already knew the answer. "Yes." "Why?" My voice sounded younger than I felt. She studied me the way people study old photographs, searching for the familiar in a face that's new. Then she stepped back. "Come in," she said. "Mi casa es tu casa." The living room was simple, cross on the wall. Family photos in wooden frames, a graduation cap perched in one picture, a wedding dance in another. My eyes stuck on a photo of a man at a barbecue grill, laughing into the smoke, a toddler in his arms, the toddler's hair curled at the ends the way mine used to when I was 3. Something in my chest leaped, then scolded itself for daring. "Sit," Rosa said, waving me toward the couch. "You want water?" "Juice?" "Water's fine," I said, because "I want the last 19 years" wasn't on the menu. She brought a glass beaded with condensation and placed it on a coaster like it mattered that I didn't leave a ring. I liked that detail more than I should have. People who care about coasters care about other things too. She sat across from me, hands folded, wedding band catching the light. "I'm glad you came," she said. "I always wondered if one day, you know." I nodded like I understood, even though I didn't fully. "I have a deadline," I said, "for school. They need his name, and I don't know what to give them." Her face changed almost imperceptibly, not shut, not open, careful. "I can tell you what I know," she said. "I can tell you about the day you were born. I can tell you what he was like when he was little. I can tell you who in this family cries at movies and who burns the rice every time." A small smile. "I can tell you how you got that dimple." I felt my hand rise to my cheek before I could stop it. The smile tugged there like a muscle memory. "You knew about me?" She nodded. "Not details, not where, just that you were out there, that Mary, that she was keeping you safe. Safe." That word again. It landed differently in her living room, less like an excuse, more like a prayer someone had said 1,000 times. Rosa reached behind her and pulled out a box. Not neat like the folder on my passenger seat. A real box full of real life. Polaroids, letters, old school programs. "Family," she said, setting it down. "It's messy, but it's yours if you want it." I leaned forward without meaning to. My fingers hovered over the edges of photographs, afraid to touch and wrinkle time. A boy with the same cowlick I fight every morning grinned up at me. A woman with eyes like mine held a cake with 19 candles. A handwritten recipe for arroz con pollo with "add more salt" scrawled in the margins. Something in me softened. Not trust, not yet. But the part of me that had been clenched for days unfurled an inch. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Anything. What was he like?" Before everything." Rosa looked past me as if the right words were hanging on the wall with the cross. "He was loud," she said finally. "Loud when he loved, loud when he laughed, loud when he was angry. He could make a room feel like a party. He could make a room feel like a storm. He wasn't built for middles. I let that settle. People aren't one thing, I knew that. But hearing it out loud made the air heavier again. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees, eyes kind but steady. I don't know what you came here hoping to find. A name, a signature, a piece of paper for your application. I can help with some of that. But I can't make promises about what any of it will feel like. I nodded. I don't need it to feel good, I said. I just need it to be real. We sat with that for a moment. The idea that reality itself can be a relief, she stood. Eat first, she said, heading to the kitchen. No one should make big decisions on an empty stomach. From the doorway, I could see a pot steaming. The shimmer of heat above it, the smell of mesa and simmered meat drifted into the room. It hit something old in me, something I didn't have a name for. Memory isn't always pictures. Sometimes it's the way your shoulders drop when a familiar smell finds you. Felt hope arrive quietly, not as fireworks, but as a chair pulled out for you at a table where you weren't sure you belonged. That's what it felt like when Rosa set a plate in front of me and told me to eat. I picked up the fork. The first bite was warm, ordinary, exactly right. She watched me, then smiled like she'd been waiting to do that for years. You can ask after, she said. We'll take it slow. I nodded. My chest loosened another inch. There were still forms to fill, names to face, histories to hear that might hurt more than they healed. But for the first time since the blank line on the admission form froze my hand, I felt something like a future opening, a door not slammed. A voice that didn't say no. So let me ask you, if you were me, sitting in a stranger's living room that somehow smelled like home, would you keep going? Would you take the next step, ask the hardest question, and risk whatever answer might follow? Watched a room tilt against you, not by volume, but by the way eyes decide what you deserve? That's what happened the afternoon the rest of them came over. Rosa had said Sunday lunch. She hadn't said tribunal. It started soft, tamales on plates, steam rising in little ribbons, a soccer game humming low on the TV, crowd noise like distant surf. The kind of afternoon that should have felt like family. Chairs pulled close, elbows on tables, napkins tucked under plates. Hope sat beside me, borrowed and fragile. Then the front door opened and the temperature changed. 2 men walked in first, one with forearms like fence posts, an oil-stained cap, the other slim with careful eyes that took inventory. Behind them, an older woman with a rosary wrapped twice around her wrist and a mouth that looked like it preferred the word no. Their footsteps said they belonged. Mine said I didn't know how to. Rosa stood, wiped her hands on a dish towel, and smiled like there were no landmines in the living room. This is Ethan, she said. The name sounded new and old at once. He's... The older woman cut in. We know who he is. Then to me, you look like him around the eyes. She didn't say his name. No one did. It hung in the air like a smell you can't quite place, but wish you could get rid of. I stood because my body remembered manners even when my heart didn't. Hi. My voice tried to be steady. Thank you for letting me come. The slim man nodded without committing to a feeling. The big one folded his arms. The older woman sat and the rosary clicked against the table like tiny bones. We ate, or they did. I pushed masa around with my fork and tried to learn their rules by watching their faces. Rosa kept the conversation afloat with small talk that didn't ask for answers. Work, weather, the neighbor's dog that kept escaping. I wanted her to keep talking forever, to stretch the bridge between us until it reached the other side. But bridges have weight limits. So, the big man said finally, setting his fork down with the sound of a small gavel. What do you want? 4 words. No decoration. I swallowed. I need information for school. My application. They're asking for my father's name. I gestured at the papers in my bag. I just need to know. The older woman's mouth pressed thinner. School, she repeated, like she was tasting a word from someone else's kitchen. And after school? What then? Money? It's not about money, I said too fast. I just need the name for the records, that's all. Records, the slim man murmured. Records get people hurt. Not him, the big man said, eyes still on me. Not the boy. Boy! The older woman snapped. He's a man now. He came here like a man. He can hear like one. I sat up straighter. I can, I said. I came to hear the truth. Silence. Then the big man leaned back, chair creaking. Truth is messy, he said. Truth gets under your fingernails and doesn't wash out. I'm not afraid of messy, I said, even as my stomach folded in on itself. He studied me with a look that didn't feel cruel so much as tired. You think a name will fix you? I don't think anything will fix me, I said. I just don't want to be a blank line on a form. The older woman's eyes flared, something like anger sparking where pity should have been. Blank? She said. Your mother made you blank, not us. She took you, she hid you. She broke your name and gave you another, and now you come here asking us to glue the pieces. She tapped the rosary against the table. Click, click, click. We are not your glue. The words landed like gravel in my mouth. I didn't know how to chew them without bleeding. Rosa tried to step in. Tia! But the big man raised a hand, and Rosa let the sentence fall. Let him talk, he said. Then to me, tell us what she told you. Who? Your mother. I looked down at my hands. They were steady in a way my voice wasn't. She said she ran. That he was dangerous. That if he found out about me, he would never let us go. The slim man looked at the older woman, something unspoken moving between them like a shadow. The big man's jaw worked once, twice. That part, he said, is true. The room shifted just a little. The floor tilted back toward center. But, the older woman said, the word sharp as a pin, truth has two sides. He was not only the worst thing he did, he was also a son. He was also a brother. He could make this house laugh so hard the walls shook. He could stand in the yard and flip Karn like a magician. He could hold a baby so gentle it made you forget his hands could do anything else. Her voice wavered, then straightened. Men are not one thing. I know, I said quietly. I wasn't sure if I did, but I wanted to. She leaned forward, eyes on mine, and there it was. The turn I didn't see coming. The one my bones had somehow predicted anyway. You look for him now because you need something, she said. Paper, a name. Maybe a hole to throw your anger into. That is not family. Family is here for Sunday when no one needs anything. Family shows up before the form is due. Heat rose up my neck. I didn't know you existed, I said, and hated how small it sounded. That's not our fault, she said. I felt the tamales turn to clay in my mouth. Is anything your fault? The question jumped out before I could cage it. He hurt people. He hurt her. He almost hurt me. Does anyone here say that out loud? The big man's face hardened. We say it to ourselves, he said. We say it at night when there are no young ears to catch it and carry it like a curse. The slim man spoke for the first time, his voice careful. What do you need from us that the court documents don't already say? I opened my bag and set the birth certificate on the table. The line next to father was a clean wound. His full legal name, that's it. I'm not asking for letters. I'm not asking for a scholarship. I'm not asking you to pretend you know me. The older woman considered it the way you consider a bill you don't want to pay. And when the name brings trouble? She asked. When someone knocks at your door because they knocked at ours first? Then I'll answer it, I said. Because it'll be my door. Rosa exhaled, a sound of relief and worry stitched together. "He's not asking for a seat at the table," she said softly. "Just a word." "Words are expensive," the older woman said. "They cost more than money." Something in me snapped. Not into anger exactly, but into clarity. "So does silence," I said. "Silence cost me a father, and then it cost me the man who tried to be one. Silence cost me knowing who I am. I'm here to pay my own bill." The big man looked at me for a long time. Then he pushed his chair back, stood, and left the room without a word. I heard a drawer open in the hall. Paper rustled. The older woman's eyes followed him, then returned to me, measuring. He came back with a thin folder, set it on the table, put one hand on it like a notary and the other around his own wrist like he was bracing for an impact. "I kept this because I keep everything," he said. "Birth announcements, parking tickets, bad poems." A humorless smile flickered. "If you take this name, you take the weight that comes with it." "I'm already carrying it," I said. He slid the folder toward me. The older woman didn't stop him, but she didn't bless it either. The slim man looked like he wanted to put his hand on my shoulder, then didn't. I opened the folder. There it was, a photocopy of a hospital form, a signature that looped like a careless promise, the letters of a man I had never known but wore in my face. My mouth went dry. I copied it onto my checklist. Each stroke felt like carving something into stone. When I looked up, the older woman was watching me with a new expression I couldn't place. Not kindness, not cruelty. Maybe the look people give someone walking a tightrope. Half hope, half calculation. "Thank you," I said. The words were too small for the room. "You have what you came for," she said, folding her hands over the rosary. "Eat, then go." Rosa flinched. "Tia." "It's better," the older woman said, not unkindly. "Clean lines, fewer ghosts." I put the paper back in my bag. The zipper sounded final. I stood, the chair legs scraping. "I didn't come for ghosts," I said. But I guess they came for me anyway." At the door, Rosa hugged me, real, not polite. "Text me when you get home," she said, echoing my mother's morning. Two women on opposite shores, asking the same small, holy thing. The big man gave me a short nod. The slim man raised a hand halfway, like a wave too shy to finish. The older woman looked at the floor and said, almost to herself, "Dios nos guard." Outside, the sun was too bright. The air felt a degree hotter, like the street had turned its face away. I sat in the car with the engine off, hands on the wheel, breath slow. The name on my paper felt heavier than the bag that carried it. I stared at the house and imagined another version of me opening that red door 4 years earlier, 8 years earlier, 14. Was there a timeline where I was inside now, unremarkable, asking for more rice and laughing at the soccer match? Or did every road here always end on the porch? My phone buzzed. A text from Rosa. "You are not a blank line." Another buzz, a second text before I could answer. But sometimes family doesn't know how to write with the pen you bring. I exhaled a laugh that wasn't really one. Then I started the car. The street peeled away under my tires, and the house shrank in the rear view until it was just a square, then a dot, then memory. Gotten exactly what you asked for and felt emptier for having it? That was me on the drive back, paper in the bag, name on the line, and a new weight pressing where hope had sat. So tell me, if you were in my seat, if the door you knocked on opened just wide enough to hand you the truth and then closed, would you call that a victory? Or would you call it what it felt like to me? The moment you realize that some bridges aren't built from kindness or blood, but from the simple, brutal exchange of a word? Come home carrying a story you don't know how to tell? Not because it's complicated, but because one wrong word could shatter whatever is left? That was me, standing on our porch with the key stuck halfway in the lock. My bag felt heavier than it should. Paper doesn't weigh much, but names do. I pushed the door open. The house breathed out the same soft, tired smell it always did at dusk. Laundry detergent, dish soap, a hint of lemon from the cleaner my mom swore by. The TV was off. The hallway lamps were on. Thin light pooled on the floor like spilled tea. "Mom?" I said, too quietly, then louder. "Mom?" No answer. Just the slow, steady hum of the refrigerator, a clicking sound from the heater, the faint tick of the clock in the hall that's always 2 minutes fast. I followed the light to the kitchen. She was there, not moving, hands wrapped around a mug she wasn't drinking, hair up the way she wore it when she was too tired to care what it looked like, eyes red but dry, as if she'd used up her allotment of tears for the day and was waiting for tomorrow's supply. "I'm back," I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded older and younger at once. She looked at me, then at the bag on my shoulder. Something in her face braced. "Are you okay?" What do you say to that? When the truth is not yes or no, but a tangle no sentence can hold. "I have what I need," I said. It felt like betrayal to say it that simply. "Sit," she whispered. She pushed the chair out with her foot, the legs scraping a long, low line across the tile. I sat. The chair was cool. The kitchen felt colder than it should have, the kind of cold that doesn't come from weather. We stayed like that for a while. 2 people at the same table, sharing the same air, each trying not to break it. The clock ticked. A car passed outside. Somewhere a neighbor's dog barked twice and quit. The little life noises that usually make a house feel alive only made ours feel emptier. "I met them," I said, finally. She nodded. "Rosa?" "And more." I left the names in my throat. I didn't want to line them up and hand them over like proof. They gave me what I went for. I set my bag on the table and unzipped it slowly. The sound too loud. Paper rustled. I didn't pull anything out. I just rested my hand on the folder like it might run. Her eyes stayed on my face, not the bag. Were they kind? I thought of the marigolds by the door, the rosary at the table, a hug at the threshold, a voice that called me mijo and another that called me nothing. The way one man's hand hovered near my shoulder and thought better of landing. Kind is a big word. Too simple for what happened. Some were, I said. Some weren't. She didn't flinch. That sounds right. Silence again. But this time it wasn't hostile. It was careful. Like when you carry a glass bowl from the sink to the counter and both hands are wet. You don't rush. You hold your breath. You place it down softly because you want it to stay in one piece. I looked around our kitchen like I'd never seen it. The magnet from Yosemite on the fridge that David bought after our first hike. The one where I pretended I wasn't afraid of heights, and he pretended he didn't notice. The dent near the baseboard where I'd dropped a skillet last year trying to be fancy with pancake flips. The grocery list on the whiteboard. Milk, rice, paper towels, cilantro. A life counted in small, repeated needs. "Do you hate me?" she asked, so softly I almost missed it. The kind of question people only say when they've already asked it to themselves 1,000 times. I could have told the truth in 2 syllables, but truth is rarely that neat. "I did," I said, "today, for a while, on the drive up, on the drive back, in the middle of their living room. I hated you, and then I hated myself for hating you." She closed her eyes. That little movement made her look older. "I deserve some of that." "Maybe." I swallowed. "But I also get why you did it. I don't know if I can forgive all of it. Not today, maybe not tomorrow. But I'm done throwing knives." "Thank you," she said. And in those 2 words I heard everything she didn't say. Relief, regret, the relief of regret. We sat, breathing, A kettle hissed on the stove, the flame low, forgotten. She stood to turn it off. I stood at the same time. Our hands touched on the knob. We both pulled back. Then, without thinking, I turned the flame down and she set the kettle on a cool burner. A tiny choreography we'd done 1,000 times. Our bodies remembering how to be a team while our minds lagged behind. "I'm going to make tea," she said. "You'll drink it?" "I will." She opened the cabinet and reached for the dented tin of Earl Grey. The lid made a soft pop. The smell unfurled. Bergamot, citrus, the scent of Sunday afternoons and rain. She spooned leaves into the strainer with the precision of someone counting seconds. I rinsed 2 mugs and set them down, white ceramic, hairline crack in one handle, my favorite. "Do you want to tell me?" she asked, pouring water. "Or do you want to just sit?" "Both," I said. "Can we do both?" "We can." I told her small things first. Neutral things. The color of the door. The sound of a swing in a yard. How Rosa says my name like it's a story with a beginning and an end. The way the kitchen smelled like masa and onions and something warm I couldn't place. How someone laughed in the next room and I almost answered, like my body recognized a joke no one told. She listened with her whole face. That's her greatest talent. Not the cooking, not the lists, not the way she can stretch $50 into a week of dinners. It's the listening that saves people, if saving is possible. I didn't tell her who said what or how the air shifted when some words entered it. I didn't tell her about the folder, thin but loud. I didn't say the name out loud either. Speaking it here felt like turning our kitchen into a courtroom, and I was done with courtrooms for the day. Instead, I told her about the goodbye on the porch, the text that followed, "You are not a blank line." The second text, "But sometimes family doesn't know how to write with the pen you bring." She held the mug with both hands and stared at the steam like it might reveal a picture. "That's a kind thing to say," she murmured. "It is." I took a sip. The tea burned a little. I wanted it to. Pain that makes sense is a relief. We drifted back into quiet. Not the old quiet that punished. A new quiet that made room. The kettle clicked as it cooled. The clock ticked closer to the right time. A siren wailed far away and faded before it reached us. "Do you want me to call him?" she asked suddenly. "David." The name landed between us like an object wrapped in cloth. We both looked at it. Neither of us touched it. "I don't know," I said, and that was true. The ache I'd been carrying for him all week woke up like a child from a nap. Disoriented, needy, stubborn. I missed him. I missed the stupid dad jokes. I missed how he always knocked on my door twice, even when it was open. I missed the way he made the house louder in a way that made the walls feel closer, safer. But missing isn't the same as mending. I don't know yet. She nodded. "Okay." The word had a kind of mercy inside it. "Whenever you do, I'll be here. Or I'll stay out of it, whatever you ask." I looked at her then. Really looked. The lines beside her mouth. The scar on her wrist from when the blender lid flew off and strawberry puree painted the ceiling like confetti. The small burn on her thumb from a Thanksgiving pie. The evidence of a life built by doing things the long way around because the straight path wasn't safe. "I was going to yell," I said. When I walked in, I was ready to throw everything, the papers, the bag, words. I had a speech in my head on the drive back. It was good, cruel, but good. She half smiled. "You always did rehearse your fights." "Yeah." I rubbed my eyes. "But then I saw you in this light, with that mug, and I was tired. Not just today tired, years tired. I don't want to lose more to noise." "I don't either," she said. "I've lost enough to it." The tea cooled. The room warmed by 1/2 degree, or maybe that was just my shoulders lowering from around my ears. I pulled the folder from the bag at last and set it on the table, not opening it, just letting it exist between us. A fact, not a weapon. "We can fill the forms tomorrow," I said. "Tonight, I want to be here. Just here. Her exhale trembled. Okay. We did normal things, the kind you never think to remember until a day arrives when you're grateful they exist. We washed the 2 mugs, wiped the counter, argued gently about whether the sponge should be replaced. It should. Put the kettle back on its hook. She wrote sponges at the bottom of the grocery list in her loopy script. I uncapped a marker and added cilantro because I'd smudged it earlier and decided it was fate. A memory came out of nowhere, fast and bright. Me at 10, sitting at this same table, feet not touching the floor, learning to cut limes without squinting. David teaching me the trick. Thumb here, blade there, wrist steady. Look brave, he'd said, even if you aren't. I felt the ghost of the motion in my hand and almost laughed. A flashback can be kind sometimes. Not all of them bruise. Ethan? My mom said, pulling me back, voice careful again. Thank you for coming home. I didn't know where else to go. I meant it as a joke. It didn't land as one. I wanted to come here. She nodded like that was the answer she'd been holding her breath for. This is your home, she said, even when it hurts. The fridge hummed louder for a second, then quieted. I felt something shift inside me, small but real. Forgiveness didn't arrive. It sent a postcard. On my way. Don't wait up. That was enough for tonight. We turned off the lights. The hallway felt warmer than the kitchen had. We didn't hug, but we didn't keep distance on purpose either. Our shoulders almost touched. It was more human than any speech I could have delivered. At my bedroom door, I stopped. Mom? Yes? I'm going to sign the application. I tapped the folder without looking at it. Not tonight, tomorrow. But I'm going to do it. She closed her eyes and opened them, relief loosening her whole face. I'll make breakfast, she said. Pancakes. The way he taught you, quote. Yeah, I said, smiling for the first time all day. The way he taught me, I went into my room. The bed looked like a shore after a storm. Rumpled, uncertain, waiting. I lay down on top of the covers, hands on my chest, counting breaths until my ribs learned the rhythm again. Through the wall, I heard the soft clink of my mom setting the kettle back straight, the slow drag of a chair across tile, the sigh that says a day has ended and not everything broke. Decided not to fight, not because you lost, but because you finally understood what you were fighting for? That was me, in the quiet of our house, with a name in my bag, a mother in the next room, and a tomorrow I wasn't afraid to meet. So tell me, if you were here, at this same kitchen table, with the night soft around you and the past still loud but not in charge, would you open the folder now? Or let the silence hold you 1 hour more? Watched the sun take a breath before it climbs. The gray part, when the world looks undecided. That's the hour I woke up, no alarm. Just the light changing its mind behind the blinds and the quiet of a house that had made peace with itself for one night. I lay there, counting the slow turns of the ceiling fan, feeling the folder on my desk without touching it. Paper doesn't hum, but somehow it did. I got up. The floor was cool. My room smelled like laundry and the ghost of yesterday's cologne. In the hallway, I could hear the kettle come alive. Soft hiss, then the steady whisper like it was telling the water a secret. My mom was already up. Of course she was. Mothers always beat the sunrise to the kitchen on the days that matter. Morning, I said, stepping into the light. She looked over her shoulder, hair tied back, sleeves pushed up. Flour dusted the counter. The griddle was warming. Pancakes? She asked, like she didn't already know the answer. The way he taught me, I said. The words fit in my mouth without splinters today. We moved together like a routine we'd rehearsed for years without knowing why. She poured the batter, I flipped. She buttered, I stacked. The first one tore a little. Too eager, too early. I laughed, and it didn't sound borrowed. He always said the first pancake was the sacrificial one, I said. He was right about some things, she murmured, not looking away from the pan. We ate at the table, no phones, no TV. The syrup crept down the edges, and I chased it with my fork like time I didn't want to waste. The house had a morning sound, the gentle complaint of the window above the sink, the old clock correcting itself, the faint rumble of a bus 2 streets over. I let it all in. I wanted to remember this exact quiet for later. The still air right before a signature changes the day. I'm going to sign, I said when our plates were mostly knife-scraped. I know, she said, as if she'd been on the other side of the sentence already, waiting for me to arrive. Do you want me here? Yes, I said. Then, but not over me. A smile. Just here. She nodded, a promise stitched into the small movement. I brought the folder to the table like it might jump if I didn't keep a hand on it. The college forms were crisp, stubbornly official. Check boxes like tiny authorities, the birth certificate in its plastic sleeve, the photocopied name in someone else's handwriting, heavy as a stone I'd already been carrying, and the box, the one that had mocked me, Father's name, a rectangle of quiet. I peeled the cap off the pen. The click sounded bigger than it should have. I wrote my own name first, Ethan, and my last. The one that belongs to my mother and to me and to every bill and every yearbook and every mail addressed to current resident that somehow found us anyway. The ink moved cleanly. My hand didn't shake. Then I stopped at the line that had taken up so much oxygen. I read the label again as if it might change. It didn't. The room felt colder. The air pulled back. I could hear my own breath like I was standing in a canyon. Learned that control sometimes looks like letting a thing stay empty. That not filling a space is also a choice. That's what found me then. Not a voice. Not a sign. Just the steady fact that I could answer the question without carving that name into my future. I put the tip of the pen on the edge of the box. My mom watched my face, not the paper. The kettle clicked as it cooled. Our metronome. I went to them, I said quietly. I asked. I got what I needed. You did, she said. I lifted the pen, drew a short line under the box, not inside it, just below, a boundary, a mark that said, I saw you. And then I moved to the next field. I left Father's name blank. The room didn't explode. No sirens announced my rebellion. The silence didn't accuse me, it held. I felt the strangest thing, lightness, right where the weight used to sit. Not because I erased the past, because I stopped letting it write in my present without permission. I finished the rest. Addresses, emergency contacts, intended major that will probably change 3 times, the small essays about adversity that I refused to turn into tragedy bait. I wrote like a person telling the truth without turning it into a show. Do you want to read it? I asked. She shook her head. I want to trust you. Then she added, almost shy, I do. I signed at the bottom. My name again, my hand sure. The letters looked like me. Not the neatest, not the loudest, mine. Pattern interrupt. Right then, a memory cut across the moment like a quick flash. Me at 12. Science fair night. David kneeling on the kitchen floor with a hot glue gun, rescuing my sagging cardboard volcano, saying, real lava's just anger with nowhere to go. Give yours a good exit. He grinned, pulled a bottle of red food coloring out of nowhere, and made my project look alive. The memory landed, bright and kind, then stepped back without stealing the scene. Do we scan or mail? My mom asked, practical as ever. Both, I said. Scan for now, mail the originals. We moved. Printer on, paper fed. A small whirring that sounded like progress, like the future being turned into pixels and sent forward. My mom held the envelope as I stacked pages, smoothed them with the flat of my palm, and slid them in. She licked the seal and pressed it down with 2 fingers like a benediction. I wrote the address carefully. The stamp had a tiny astronaut on it, mid-step, half-gravity, full wonder. I smiled at that, the universe sneaking a metaphor into our mailbox. "Walk it?" she asked. "Walk it," I said. We put on shoes. The morning had become honest daylight. The air held the kind of cool that makes you believe in afternoons. The sidewalk was still damp from a neighbor's sprinkler and left damp freckles on my shins. We didn't talk much. At the corner, Mrs. Patel from 2B waved with her dog, who has the energy of a new idea. We waved back. Normal things, guarding the edges of a not normal morning. The blue box waited like it always does, square and loyal. I opened the little door, slid the envelope in, and rested my fingertips on the edge for a second that lasted longer than a second. Then I let go. The soft thunk sounded final and kind at once. On the walk back, I felt taller, not because of height, but because my spine had decided to believe in itself. The future didn't look clean, it looked possible. That's better. In our kitchen again, the light had gone from gray to gold. My mom rinsed the mixing bowl. I wiped the counter. We didn't narrate it. We let the water and the sponge and the cloth say what needed saying. "Do you want to text him?" she asked, gentle. "David." I pulled out my phone. My thumbs hovered. Like birds not sure which wire to land on, I typed. I signed, deleted it. Typed, "Thank you for the pancakes." Deleted that too. Then I wrote what I meant. "I'm moving forward. I hope you are too." I stared at it. The period at the end behaved itself. I pressed send before courage could think of reasons not to. The message ticked away into the air. I didn't watch for the 3 dots. Some responses aren't words, they're time. I turned back to the table. The forms were gone. The folder was closed. The box was still empty, and somehow, so was my chest. In a good way, room had returned. Realized that a blank can be sacred. Not a hole. A space you choose to leave open so something living can breathe there. That's what this felt like. Not denial, not defiance. A boundary, a mercy. I pulled a sticky note from the drawer and wrote a single line for myself. Not everything unfinished is a failure. I stuck it inside the folder, a small yellow lighthouse for the next time I forget. The afternoon moved in. I opened my laptop and checked the portal. Submitted. A little green check next to my name. I expected fireworks to go off behind my eyes. Instead, I felt something better. A long, slow exhale my bones had been waiting to release. My mom set a bowl of sliced strawberries between us. We ate them with our fingers, juice on our thumbs. The simple sweetness of now. I don't know where you are when you're hearing this. On a bus, in a kitchen like mine, at a job you're trying to leave, lying on a bed staring at your ceiling and all the ghosts it's projected. But let me say this to you, because someone should. You get to choose what blanks you carry. Not all of them are wounds. Some are doors, some are skylights, some are the soft places you protect because not every story has to be told to prove it's real. I didn't fix my family today. I didn't rewrite the past. I signed my name under a line that stayed empty, and I walked to a blue box, and I let go. That was enough. That was everything. If you were me, if the form in front of you still had a space that hurt to look at, would you force it full? Or would you, just this once, trust the power of an honest blank and take your next step anyway?